All right, we're going to do that again now.
Got it, yeah.
All righty, boys and girls, I will steal Alex's line and say, welcome to the Red, White, Claret, and Blue podcast. Do not adjust your television sets or phones or whatever it may be that you're watching this on. You are being joined by myself, Chris. I have no clever nickname today because that's Alex's department, Condit. And we are joined by a special guest, 18 years as a head coach in high school and U.S. club soccer. Mark, the most distinguished person outside of Paul Faulkner to come on this podcast, Condit. Welcome aboard, Mark.
I'm glad to be here. I don't know if that intro is true, though. You had the high sheriff of the West Midlands as well, so I think I ranked third.
That's true.
As the third guest.
As the third guest, that's right. And if you hear that cracking and popping, that is Mark's fire because he lives in the north where it's cold.
I apologize. It's freezing, so
you don't need to apologize.
It's supposed to be worse tomorrow. Supposed to be worse tomorrow, but we'll see.
Now, Mark, as I said, Mark was a head high school soccer coach in Ohio. I went through all the sports, landed on soccer eventually, and he still coaches club soccer to this day. He is one of the reasons that I became interested in soccer, and he's one of the folks that I lean on quite a bit for tactical analysis and things like that. So I don't know that we ever thought that it would blossom into this obsession where I have a podcast with a friend of mine, but that's how we landed here. So Mark is definitely a big asset here to have as a guest host while Alex is off snowboarding in Japan. But oh, you didn't know that? You must have missed that from the pod, yeah.
I didn't say I missed that one. Okay.
Yeah, he's off snowboarding right now, actually.
I knew he was on vacation. I didn't know it was Japan. I missed that bit.
Yep, it's Japan. Yep. So now I have to say, go follow the socials. They're linked in the show notes. Apple, Amazon Music, YouTube. Check out our interview with the aforementioned Paul Faulkner and Doug Wright, MBE, for a very important surprise, and we'll have further updates to be put on our socials in early February after we consult with our legal department for that contest. So let's get right into it, Mark. Arsenal 2, Villa 2. Again, like we've said many times before, a tale of two halves in this one, I think, and periods of dominance for both sides. But let's start off by talking about the lineups and tactics. Was there anything about that surprised you the way that Unai Emery lined the boys up?
So when I saw the lineups come out and you and I were texting, I was surprised to see Matsson's inclusion, but I thought that it signified that Emery must have seen something where he thought we could go for it in that early stages. He's typically not our most defensive option, so I thought it was a signal of intent early. And I was immediately hitting the panic stations in the first 10 minutes. Like, this isn't going to work. We got to, bail on this as we were just subjected to set piece after set piece and wave after wave for 10 minutes of Arsenal attacking.
Well, I mean, so I thought Maatsen played not great on the defensive end, and we'll get into that more. But I thought that after we settled in after the first 10 minutes, I thought that Maatsen specifically, looked really good as a ball carrier, moving the ball up the pitch. And I thought that was the role that Emery wanted him to play. And I think it was in the 13th minute that he had a pretty good look at it and got a save from Raya. But he really did. And not just him. Villa struggled generally on the wing, defending the Arsenal attack pretty much for 75% of the game. But it's a big ask to contain their wingers. And I thought that it was a surprise to me that Maatsen was out there. I was also surprised that Bailey was healthy and not out there, but I suspect that may be because he's being saved for the Champions League game coming up on Tuesday.
Yeah, we'll get to the Champions League, obviously, but I think you're going to see a little bit of rotation in that lineup. So I imagine that we'll have a few guys that didn't feature today or didn't feature long, perhaps that will be more regular in the on Tuesday. But Matsson's role as he came on and carried the ball. I think what we are missing, in part, is vertical line breaks from Pau. We out of the back. We like to play out of the back, and Mings I thought was fantastic today. Like, I thought he was just a all around great player, organizing the defense. But attacking wise, you lose those vertical line breaks, and that's what Emery wants. So if you have to do it with a ball carrier rather than pinging 35-yard passes, then that's what you're going to do to get that same vertical look. And Matsson did it, and it was our few chances that we created in the first half really usually involved combinations with him. So that was good. But boy, all told, you have to give a lot of credit on the other side to Martinelli. I thought Martinelli was well up for it, and just on fire for that first 45. And I'm glad he got the one. To be honest, like he was ready.
He was, and he played great. He looked great. Matsson really struggled to contain him the whole time that he was on the first half. He picked up that yellow at the 20-minute mark, and that makes the rest of the game really difficult. And what Villa did to kind of counteract that was they tucked Matsson in more and brought Onana over to try and give Matsson defensive support, but Martinelli was still just rinsing everybody, to be honest.
He really didn't need to take that one. I thought that was
he didn't.
I mean, that's an odd place to try, and we had cover there. There's no reason to yank him back. Just recover straight back, and I know you don't want to give up another. Like, it's frustrating. I think that was a frustration foul more than anything. Like, it looked like a professional foul, but there's really no need for it.
Yeah, he was a long way from goal there. A lot of ground to cover, and there was cover behind.
You guys back, yeah. So I was a bit surprised by his choice there, and I think that made the halftime decision easier for the boss.
100%. Yeah.
So
the first half to me was a Arsenal dominance for the most part. The one thing that I wanted to point out relatively early on at the 17-minute mark, Ollie had a great chance on a counter and chose to, instead of take the ball to the left away from Thomas Partey, he elected to go to take the ball onto his right foot and directly into Partey. And had Ollie not played so well in the second half, I think that would have been the typical chorus of Watkins can't finish and those sort of things. Because I noted it right away that that's the wrong way. That's the wrong way to go. You've got to take the ball away from him, even if it's going to be a tough angle. Get a shot on goal from that, because you've only got one man to beat, and you can't just dribble the ball directly into his path.
And I mean, we know he wants to get it on his right foot typically, but how many times have you seen Watson feint in to bring the ball back out and hit? And he hits with his weaker foot, and he does it time and again. Finds the bottom corner a lot doing that. So I was a little bit surprised. That's a very, very typical Ollie move where he just does that slight shoulder fake and a step, and then drags the ball back to the outside for a snapshot. And I was very surprised not to see it there. I didn't think he'd keep going right when there's no room into that center defensive position. So I'm glad that it worked out differently. He always plays well against Arsenal, and even that it wasn't a great choice. And I'm glad that he ended up getting a goal. But his work rate in the first half never wavered, and he was up there while we were getting just beat down. He was up there by himself, still holding the ball. He does a better job than most people think with that, and he drags those two, and they've got very good center backs, and he drags them back and forth, and makes changes the field shape for us just to get a few chances. And it finally started to break more in the second half. But I thought as we settled in open play, we looked much better. When we are giving away fouls and they are just looking for corners, that's obviously the way Arsenal want to play. The first 10 minutes of that game and the last 10 minutes, same thing. It was just the way Arsenal want to go.
Yep. A lot of diving too from Arsenal. I mean, my goodness. But we'll get to that.
If you want to say it politely, you say they're looking for fouls. Like that's they are looking
I
to
don't
buy.
need to be polite. It's my podcast. Alex is gone. The governor is off. Let's go.
Yeah.
But the goal came in the 35th minute, and it had been coming. And the difficult thing for me, and I think you have similar thoughts, Mark, is that it was a great goal by Martinelli, but it's a frustrating goal to give up because Maatsen just loses him and is ball watching. And that's the way I saw it, at least anyway. And I don't know how you lose Martinelli in that spot because he's the guy that they're going to be looking for from that angle. And it was a great ball in, but Maatsen probably should have done better with that.
I think so. At least make him work a little bit more for Martinelli was due a goal with his play or some sort of goal involvement. I mean, he was fantastic. You really can't say enough about how well he played in that first half as an Arsenal player. But we don't have to make it easy. We don't have to leave him alone in the six. So I would have liked even just a body in front of him to make that a more difficult finish because I think he finishes that 100 times in 100.
Yeah, and again, if you watch the replay, it's pretty clear to me that Maatsen just forgot him, didn't know he was there. So that was tough. On the same play, Onana comes off injured, and according to the boss, it's hamstring. So we don't know what that's going to look like for his availability going forward yet. I haven't seen anything come out. I was just checking socials and the various websites before the pod here, before we recorded, to see if there was anything, any kind of update, but just that it's a hamstring and that he was a question mark, according to Unai Emery, prior to the game starting. So I don't know if it was a re-aggravation of one of his nagging injuries, but Boarde comes on, and so it's not Bogard. We've been saying it wrong, apparently, because Peter Drury corrected us all today, and yeah. Boarde comes on, and I thought played really well.
Yeah, I've been calling him Bogard since he was in our youth system and had no idea any other. Like I've never seen one of those how to pronounce his names, but if anybody, I'd trust Peter Drury, I suppose. Yeah. Boy, was I nervous. I don't know. Like I wasn't texting you at that point. I don't know what your reaction was, but I was shocked when that was the number that came up. Could not believe it. And he didn't have a lot of action in that first half, but he doesn't, for the game, he doesn't put a foot wrong. And we'll talk more about that later on. But that was the last time we saw him, if I recall, was that experiment at right back, wasn't it? Was that?
No, he's been in, I think, one or two times since. Okay. But yeah, no, it's not, he's never played particularly well. But I mean, and that right back is a disaster, and that's not his fault, No. But yeah, I had the same thought. I mean, when I saw him come up, I thought to myself, "Oh, okay, really? All right." But then you do think that there's some limitation there because of the number of injuries we've got, particularly Ross Barkley and John McGinn, that are not available.
I think that would have been Barkley probably had he been available, but dumb luck sometimes.
I mean, I thought he played really well. He passed well, which I was excited to see because he really struggled when he was at right back, finding an angle. And I thought he was excellent in the times when he had to pass the ball past the or through the Arsenal press. He didn't look like the moment was too big for him, which is saying something since it was away at the Emirates. I was relatively pleased, and now you wonder if Emery is planning on keeping him around because for squad depth. And I mean, if he's got that ability to play a defensive midfield role, that's going to add to our ability of Aston Villa's ability to do different things with the lineup and have more depth across the 11.
Yeah, I mean, and think about who he's up against here. This isn't a slouch for your first hour of involvement here. Like, this is a very expensive and very skilled and highly acclaimed Arsenal midfield.
Right.
There are people who would make the case, I'm not one of them, but there are people who would make the case that they've got the best midfield in the Premier League. And he was not out of place. Right. The initial stats after the game, I didn't see lately if there are any corrections. He didn't miss a pass. 100% passing accuracy. So that's incredible against a team like that. For a full hour, he did it.
So 1-0 at half. Mark, do you have any other final thoughts on the first half?
I just think so. I was happy to see how he defended their set pieces, but I truly thought, and it didn't occur, but I thought one was going to come on a set piece with the way that we had played. It just seemed like we were playing into their hands, giving up too many fouls, giving up too many corners, and it's just that's what they do. That's how they're going to score. So I was actually surprised that we didn't. I think Mings is a big presence in there, in the air, as well as just vocally. He organizes and marshals that back line. So I thought that his presence in that first half helped to calm down what could have been a very, very bad start after 10 minutes.
And Emi Martinez makes a few nice saves too throughout the game. But that you hate to say like, oh well, Emi did his thing, but Emi Martinez did a lot to keep Villa in the game as well. Second half,
we get used to it.
Yeah, that's right. Second half, Havertz has a goal at the 55-minute mark. It was another great cross in. Villa did not handle it and did not have coverage. Martinez nearly made the save, but did not. And I really think he kind of is mad at himself for letting that one through. But it would have been a difficult save to make, I think. But he almost did it.
So yeah, I mean that, and you and I have mentioned this before, that it's not like it's a howler, but for him, we expect him to make that save. And I think he was as surprised as we were that it went underneath him, because he's in the right spot, and the ball just kind of gets past him. I think on a lot of days he makes that save, but what a lousy way to start the second half. And I think that this is where years ago, if we start a half that way, we lose that game 4 or 5-0. To tell the truth, in years past. With Emery, it never feels like we're out of it, even when things aren't going our way. And they turn the switch very, very quickly. So, you were going to talk about that next attack, and it was pretty much the next attacking sequence that we had, more or less.
Yep. So I agree 100% with what you said, and it was impressive, I think, to see the resolve. Now, Arsenal have given up quite a few points from winning positions. So far this season, they've given up, I think, now 12 points from winning positions. So it's not 100% unexpected. But I think you're right that years ago, with previous managers, you would see
even good managers. Even good managers. I'm not gonna just shovel dirt on guys here. Like,
right.
That's a difficult situation.
Sure. But pretty much the next offensive attack, 60 minutes. So 5 minutes later, what a ball, what a goal. Tell me about it, Mark. Give me your thoughts.
So the ball in from Digne is just note perfect. What a player. And he had a fantastic second half for the most part too. And Tielemans, I don't know. There's some people calling that a diving header. I'm not sure if I'm going to fully, he does go to ground sort of to get there, but I don't know if he's all the way diving. But he lays out for the ball. He puts his face in a very dangerous position. He just an absolute backbreaker of a goal if you're Arsenal, to tell the truth. Digne creates the time for himself. He creates the space for himself to cross that ball in, and the it's from that point on, it's just a want to. And Tielemans was in the better spot. He was just in the much better place to finish it, and 100% gutted it through to put that ball past. I mean, you could see the confidence grow, and I think that a little bit that what you and I've talked about with Arsenal's sort of mentality, there's a bit of a shrivel there on their side, and it immediately sort of settles in.
We'll talk more about that, I think, as we reach the end of the game. But yes, I agree with you. And you could see, I think, from the moment that ball goes in and the celebration, Tielemans grabs the ball. It is not all right, we're back in this. It's we're going to go get another one, and then we're going to try and get another one, is the mentality. And you could hear the momentum suck out of the place. And the loudest noise you heard was from that away end for the next 20 minutes. So going on, not 8 minutes later, so less than 10 minutes, Matty Cash, our Polish brother, who did have his struggles defensively today, but you talked about Digne creating space for his cross. Do you recall what Matty Cash did on that, where he brought the ball from his right?
Yes, I was going to bring that up too.
Brings over to his left and crosses from his left.
Yep.
And you want to talk about an inch perfect ball. That was it. Your thoughts, Mark, and Ollie Watkins' finish.
I mean, we'll get to the finish too, but the ball to play it in, I was stunned that he went to his left foot. And had he played it with his right, it never would have gotten there. The ball would have either been too close to the keeper or headed away if it's on the other side of the first defender. But with his left foot, it just drops over everybody because it's swinging in. For Ollie on that finish, it's very easy to put that ball miles over as it's coming down. He could have put that out of the stadium with the slightest of touches because of the way that ball is coming down on him. So it's a pretty deft finish to put that onto the roof rather than sort of over the roof of the stadium. But when I came, as I was watching that goal, Lizzie, my wife, was not able to watch. She's also a Villa fan now. I've converted her over. And I asked her who owns the Emirates Stadium. If you pull up their Wikipedia page, who owns the Emirates? And she said, I don't know. I don't understand. I said, it should read Oliver George Arthur Watkins. And she then realized what had happened because I was jumping up and down celebrating. So
was that his sixth goal? Was that his sixth goal at the Emirates, I think?
I didn't. Did you look that one up? I didn't look it up. I mean, it's what he does, and
it's a lot. Yeah,
he loves a goal at the Emirates, and we all know he's a boyhood Arsenal fan. And truth be told, he probably would want, if not Aston Villa, he would probably want to see Arsenal win the league. But man, does he crush their souls a lot! Like he put away end limbs yet again for Ollie Watkins. I mean, it's just incredible. Like an annual tradition at this point.
I was going to say a familiar sight now, right? And so from that 60-minute mark on until about the last 10 minutes, like you talked about already, Mark, you could see just Villa growing in confidence and growing in confidence and growing in confidence. And then Ollie does come off for Duran at the 78-minute mark. And I wonder if that's not for Champions League considerations as well, because you thought that maybe Ollie would stay out there given the way he'd been playing in that second half. But then 84th minute Bailey on for Ramsey, and then you start to see Villa come under it again. And it's a lot of pressure from Arsenal, a lot of corners and set pieces, as you mentioned earlier. And we'll just skip ahead to the exciting part. 87th minute. Marino from a point of not extreme pressure, considering that Villa were under it for the most part of that last 10 minutes. That ball just dropped to him and he had space to shoot. Goes in. What's that?
Good rip. He hammered that thing.
He did. The problem, and nobody saw it at first. I didn't see it. I doubt you saw it, right? Goes directly off of Kai Havertz's wrist. And that goal is quickly disallowed. And it's the fastest VAR review in human history.
Yeah, we're not used to that, are we?
Yeah.
that was quick.
And they got it right. Like Alex and I bang on about refereeing, specifically VAR and the poor institution of it and how it works. This is exactly how you want it to work, right? It's fast. It's disallowed quickly. It was an obvious handball, even though there are still Arsenal fans talking about the fact that it wasn't a handball. And they made the right call. And then Villa are able to see it out. It gets a little dicey at the end with the corner given up at the 97th minute. But Villa see it through and get a huge point away at the Emirates. I mean, you're given any season, but especially this season where Villa have struggled away, 5 straight losses before Everton away, and then coming into a tough place, or a tough team anyway, to play like Arsenal.
Arsenal haven't lost at home and obviously they still haven't. What is that? 16 league matches
16 now, I think. Yeah,
like,
yeah. So to come
a
away with a point there is huge, huge for Villa. So Mark, I know you have some thoughts on the mentality of Arsenal because I have similar thoughts.
Yeah.
And I think that you and I are going to be in agreement here. But even the handball, like you could see Marino knew it immediately because they showed the replay after the fact. He doesn't celebrate at all. In fact, his hands go to his mouth like this. Sorry for everybody that's audio only. And because he knows immediately, Marino does, that it's a handball and it's not gonna stand. But tell me about what your thoughts are, because now we're getting into a broader point here about Arsenal. Tell me your thoughts on their mentality. I mean, going from 2-0 up at the hour mark to 2-2, and Villa looked the better side for 20 minutes of that last half hour at home at the Emirates. Tell me what you think that says about Arsenal and what it says about Aston Villa.
Well, so as I think that last half was a microcosm of Arsenal, wasn't it? Like they can play some very, very good soccer. Sometimes, and it's frustrating as a fan, as a neutral, if I'm watching Arsenal just play someone else, it's frustrating they don't always, right? Like they've got the capability to absolutely play expressive, wonderful soccer. And when things don't go their way, they are the moaniest, whiniest, smallest team that you can possibly imagine. And I've never seen anything like it. And their fan base have adopted that mentality. They not all of them. I don't want hashtag not all Arsenal fans. I realize there are bad apples in every bunch. But the whining and moaning and pretending that wasn't a handball, like you're going to tell me that was his stomach, that he took that rocket off of Marino's foot in the belly, and not only does it somehow deflect upward at a 45-degree angle, because notice that Emmy's got that other side covered. He may not make the save because that is a
because it was a lightning bolt. You know,
oh yeah. But initially I'm watching, I was trying to figure out why Emmy got it all wrong. Like that made no sense. And then you see the replay, and it's just because it hit him in the hand. But if he takes that ball in the belly, he's going to stay down. Like that hurts. But you could see, I mean, the sort of comical moment in all that for me was in the initial half second after it happens, Havertz very sheepishly ducks his hand. He puts his right hand behind his back, as we all do when you foul, when you do something you're not supposed to. And then he celebrated like some sort of clown. Like, they're going to look at it, brother. They will. You can't convince the VAR that because of your set, maybe that works for the guys on the field, but you're not going to convince the VAR that wasn't a handball by celebrating and gesticulating wildly while the guy who scored the goal, hesitated to do so. I thought that was laughable. And I do want to. I'll talk about Arteta one more time here, but I want to hear your thoughts first on the mentality here, because they just, again, and I mentioned it before, they shrink.
Yes. So anyone that's listened to any pod, pretty much that we've recorded for the last 2 years, and we've recorded many. I am not an Arteta fan. I think that, and it's not because of his tactics necessarily, although they're getting more and more negative, I will say. Like he's really starting to become Spanish Sean Dyche.
Not today, though.
Not so much today. I was going to say that. Not so much today. But that's because he didn't view it as a big match with, Man City or a Champions League tie against Barcelona or who, just I'm naming big clubs here. But I just think that his mentality of we always are the better side. We've never actually lost a game that we deserve to lose. We've never actually done anything wrong. It's always the officials or the ball or the field or the travel or the start time or like the referee or just like every excuse in the book is always something for him. And I think that mentality seeps through the locker room and through the fan base. And so it becomes almost this we Arsenal have never lost a game that they didn't get robbed in. It's always corruption. It's always something that it's some grand conspiracy against them, and never that they're just not good enough. That's never it. So it's, to me, it is, and to bring it back to Aston Villa, it's the anti-Unai Emery. It's the exact opposite of the way Unai Emery prepares his team, because for him, it's never about the outside uncontrollables. Unai Emery is only concerned about the things that he has in his power to control, and that doesn't include the ball, the field, the officials, the travel time, the rain, whatever. So I think that their mentality matches the manager, and I think it actually may be him holding Arsenal back.
Well, I mean, his players clearly buy into his tactics and style, and I think he's well liked. And he's had a lot of success, just not trophies. And with the amount of money that they've spent, and how close they've come, I suppose you'd probably would start to think, boy, the board has got to start expecting something to get put on the shelf, right? Yeah. And funny day that both managers get booked. You don't often see that. Yeah. And I think it's a big one for Mr. Unai to come up against. He likes to get a result here. And the hilarious part for me, one, no one complained about the ball, so that's good. But when you started doing that, you've sort of lost it, right? Where the ball is different, so we didn't train well enough or something with that. But what do Unai Emery get booked for, though? This is the funniest bit.
So I'm not sure. I saw him yelling, right? But was he yelling at anything?
No, he was yelling at the Villa. It seemed like he was upset, but he played he kicked the ball after the whistle. He kicked the ball that was out of play
into the pitch, though.
Yeah. You can't kick a ball after a whistle. Yeah. Right. But I'm told that only in the history of sport, only Declan Rice has ever received a booking for that. So now it's Rice and Unai Emery. But
that's right.
Somehow in complaints I saw on Twitter, or X, whatever we call it now, I still call it Twitter. Yeah. In complaints on Twitter, people are still saying, "Oh, the Rice yellow that no one else gets
happened today."
Today, like it was. I thought that was kind of hysterical in hindsight.
Arteta's booking was dumb for him. He was arguing about a throw-in in the 42nd minute that was the correct call. Like, what are you doing?
There were a weird number of calls that, like, throw-ins, corners that were wrong today. Like, there was at least one that went our way as a throw that shouldn't have, and then several corners and throws that went the other way that shouldn't. And that's just strange. You don't see that very often.
The one he got booked for was not incorrect, though.
Right. That was right. Yeah, that was right.
But so anyway, at the end of the day, it's a 2-2 draw. I think everybody is going to be reasonably happy with a point from Villa there. You'd obviously like the win, and for a minute there, it looked like they might push to get it. But I'm certainly happy that we take a point there. So we'll talk about good points, bad points. We've talked about some of this. For me, Mark, Ollie Watkins getting another goal, so you see the confidence growing, and you know the type of player he is. He scores, and he tends to score in bunches. And now that's 2 straight games of goals. So that's a good thing. I thought the last 30 minutes were solid to great, I should say. It was such a frustrating first half, and a lot of that has to do with Arsenal playing so well. So I don't want to take anything away from their first 55, 60 minutes. Right. But then Villa really showed a lot of resolve and resiliency to me for those last 30 minutes. And then as much as Matty Cash and Maatsen struggled, because we didn't even talk about that, Matty Cash in the second half, they were just going after him, and he was getting smoked. Didn't concede, but he really, really struggled defensively there in the second half. But Mings and Konsa, I thought both played well defensively. Konsa kind of took on that role of the ball carrying center back a little bit toward the second half. And Mings, again, you talked about the loss offensively, and Alex and I have talked about the loss offensively of not having Pau there. But defensively, he was so solid today. And Arsenal's consistent wing play and sending in crosses, it was nice to have the big physical presence of Tyrone Mings. Did you have anything else you wanted to add to that, or any other good points you wanted to bring up?
So I think that we've talked about most of them. The Mings and Konsa, I like to see Konsa as that progressive center back. We obviously that was his role a couple of years ago, where he was up in the tops of the division for yards carried, and that's a good thing for us. The Mings and his defensive role these last two games, that's back-to-back very, very good games for him. I wasn't sure that this game was going to suit him, truthfully, at the start of it. Obviously we don't have many options back there anymore, but I wasn't sure that this was going to be a game for him. But the combination of Arsenal's style that they went with today, playing down the wings, and his sort of marshalling the defense is one of the reasons that we were able to win that game. So other than that, it's good finally to get a point from one of the top five ahead of us. We've not done well against teams above us on the table. So hopefully that in the latter portion of the season here, we'll be able to take a few more, because we've done well against teams beneath us. We have to start taking points and threes, truthfully, against those teams that are ahead of us if we want to stay in what is now a very, very crowded Champions League fight.
Yeah. And now 4 points from 6, in away. So that's solid. Bad points. We talked about Maatsen and Cash. I think you have to give credit to Arteta in that he found that weakness and exploited it in both halves. Unai Emery gets a touchline ban for his third yellow, and Amadou Onana. Geez, Louise.
I'm buying you that shirt now. Yeah.
It's not my name, bro.
He sells it.
Amadou Onana picks up another injury and a hamstring, and that, you're probably looking at a few weeks for that as well. So that's going to change Champions League. That's going to change lineups, and there are some Villa fans that are down on Onana. I am less so. I think he's a terrific player. I think he's 24 years old, and he's not going to be 100% great every game yet. But I think he's a player they have marked for the future.
Oh, for sure. I think that he's been sort of up and down this year. But I also feel like just in the new year, especially here, he started to Christmas and from Christmas on, he's really starting to round into form. He had a very nice game away to Everton, and today, obviously, we really didn't see much from him before the injury, but it wasn't like he was out there committing some sort of atrocity or something like that. I think that hurts. We've got a number of midfield injuries now, and even if you don't, even if he doesn't play particularly well, where he's 9s and 10s all over the field, his presence in the middle is a calm one all the time. He and Kamara both, but so I think that's a big miss for us, and a big miss in terms of what versatility we'll have in the midfield.
Mm-hmm. So we'll move on now to the larger implication in the season. George makes an appearance sneezing, as he usually does. Bless you. The larger implication of the season, Villa now sit 7th. They could drop to 8th, depending on City and Ipswich.
Come on, check your boys.
Yeah. But like I said, after really struggling away, 4 points from a possible 6th in their last 2. So I think that's a positive. All right. Now that we've covered Arsenal again, 2-2, good point. Let's talk about the upcoming game in the Champions League, and that is against a struggling Monaco side. So that's Tuesday on Paramount Plus here in America. and it looks like a winnable game for the Villa, but for the travel and maybe some struggle or some injury concerns and things like that. But a win here likely seals a top 8 finish, which would get you into the knockout round automatically. It's not a guarantee, but you'd probably get there if you get 3 points here at Monaco. So what I can tell you so far about Monaco, they are struggling this season. They're sitting 4th in Ligue 1. They are terrible. I mean, 4th doesn't sound bad unless you're familiar with Ligue 1. I'm sorry, Ligue 1. It's not good. And they have an almost negative 10 xG according to Who Scored. Their xG in the Champions League is much closer. It's a little under +1. But boy, do they struggle to score. My goodness.
Lately, especially, yeah.
Yeah, they have 29 goals in 18 games in Ligue 1. And if you take away a 5-1 win over Red Star Belgrade, their Champions League, they did beat Barcelona. I point that out 1-0. So don't want to take that away from them. But if you take away that 5-1 win, their Champions League statistics look significantly worse. So they are right now not playing well. So hopefully, and they've really struggled since December. Hopefully Villa are catching them at the right time. Mark, what do you think?
So as I was looking at this game, obviously one away day for the ages, right? Like that is just, I'm envious of everyone who has a ticket to that. And I don't know if you've been looking around the secondary markets. I think it will be a lot of Villa.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah.
There are a lot of tickets available, and that's a bit of a surprise. So I imagine if you've got a little bit of coin and you're a Villa fan in England, you might make the trip across. What a time to spend in Monaco. But
what are the pies like? What are the pies?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's an issue. How much do they charge for a Carlsberg? Unbelievable. I was shocked to see that they haven't won for a month. I mean, I'm stretching it slightly by a day, right? They'll have not won for a month, and they haven't won in the league. And it's not exactly the top of Ligue 1 is obviously always good, but the rest of it is not. They're not pulling up trees here, and they've not won since December 7th in the league. Like, I couldn't believe that. So you brought up the Barca game, and that was way back in September. But where was that game?
It was at Monaco.
Yeah. It's going to be a tougher game. I really wish this was the other way around, because I think if they would have traveled to Birmingham, it would have been a much more difficult game for them and a much more winnable game for us. As I've been trying to look at I was looking at how they've been lining up recently, because they did do a little bit of back three here and there early, but now it just looks like they've settled on something like a 4-2-3-1 almost exclusively, with just a few variations here and there. So I'd expect that we should have an advantage progressing through that midfield, unless they do something different and set up sort of two big banks of 4 or something like that. But if they try 3 attacking players in that midfield 5, I'd expect that we should be able to move through the gears, as it were. But I don't know if you've gotten too much into that or what your thoughts were.
I think you're probably right, and I think Villa have the opportunity to really dominate in the middle of the park, because I've been saying this now for weeks on this podcast. I think Villa have developed one of the better midfield 5s, depending on who you put in there, in not only the Premier League but in Europe. They have a lot of players that play very well, and they're starting now, over the last handful of games, starting to play extremely well together. And once you see all of this kind of click into place, I think that really we're going to be a tough out for anybody in any competition. So I'm excited to watch what happens here. Like I said, I've got this mark not necessarily as 3 points, but as a winnable game for Villa. I think one interesting note that when I was going through, I'd forgotten that Balogun is on that team, although he's not made a ton of appearances, and he has not yet appeared in the Champions League. He's been on the bench, I think, 6 times, but never appeared. And in terms of like attacking threats, there's not really one player that stands out above the rest. They're spread. I mean, their leading goal scorer, all comps, has 7 goals. It's Elise Bansahir. He's Switzerland. So
we got a number of Swiss players as I was looking through their roster.
So they've got a range of guys that have like 3 to 7 goals. They, like I've said before, they do not score a lot, especially if you take away that 5-1 win over Red Star.
But we are great at giving up first shot on target goals. So
2 straight games without it, though.
Hey,
2 straight games, and didn't concede on a corner from Arsenal. So I think it's going to be a fun one. Like you said, a great away day, depending on the state of the pies, of course. But a great away day. What a beautiful looking stadium. This, to be honest with you, was a game that before we ended up going to the Bologna game that Alex and I were looking at in terms of travel to get to because of the stadium and obviously the surrounding area. Well, one of the things that we do here, and I don't know if I'm springing this on you, but you mentioned you thought you'd see some rotation. Do you have a lineup for this game?
So given the only thing that I think is really in question, or I think the back 4 will be likely the way we finished. I think that Dean will start. I don't see changes there. I'd be shocked, I should say, to see changes there. Obviously, with what has happened with players leaving and all that, and we haven't even gotten to that yet.
We'll get there next. Yep, that's right.
The only question that came to me was with Watkins leaving that game early, as you brought up, does that mean he starts Tuesday? Because he played a little over an hour. And it was going into this, I would have thought that it would have been Saturday Watkins, Tuesday Duran. So Watkins subbing off, though, changes that for me. I still wouldn't be surprised to see Duran start because it's one of those games where I think that against that back line, it suits him better than Arsenal, where he's going to be able to play essentially in between the 6-yard box, and in the extended 6-yard box out, because he doesn't stretch those runs like Watkins. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Duran start. I have no clue on the midfield.
That's what I was going to ask you. What do you do there with Onana going out and all the injuries they've got? Barkley, Onana, McGinn, all out injured. You're struggling to put a side together at this point.
Yeah, that one is. I really don't know. I really don't know what he's going to do. I don't know. We know he likes that sort of 4-2-2-2. But who's going to be the double in the back of that? Who's going to be the double in the back of that midfield sort of box?
My thought would be that you'd pull Tielemans back, and it's Kamara and Tielemans. Kamara sitting deeper, Tielemans coming a little further forward. And then across the 3 across, wings and the number 10, like you have a lot more depth right now on the left side than you do on the right. So I think you have to go Bailey, Rogers, JJ with the potential for Daniel Malen coming on at some point, either at the left wing or at the number 10. But I think you're doing that as a sub, not as a starter. And then I think Unai is going to go with Watkins up top because of his. I mean, he's what 2 straight games of goals and 3 or 4 straight games of goal involvement. So I don't think he sits yet.
That's fair. I wondered with Malen. I don't think he starts. But I imagine he was warming up today. I thought he was going to come in, and it looked like he was. Yeah, it looked like he was for a minute. So I have to imagine that he's going to be in that the boss is going to want to get to play with his new toys.
Yep.
And we might see, it stinks if we have to pull Tielemans back because he has been so good in that forward. It's not a forward, but the more attacking,
more forward. Yeah.
Yeah. He has been in fantastic form. And again, today he could have had 2 goals. We didn't even talk about that one. He had the one off the post. So
that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, it stinks that if he has to be dropped back slightly. But I wonder if you might see that rotation where instead of, if we play centrally, we did a lot last year, where you may remember that like a player like JJ tucks in as one of the central players moves up, and you just tilt the field to one side or the other. So we might see something more like that, so that Tielemans can go forward more often, and you essentially just play one-sided, and then slide the box around, as it were. But it'll be it. If anyone can navigate it, it's Unai Emery. He has done this throughout his career. He is a European expert. I'm sure that he's not taking this game lightly. He has managed 100 of these games, so I trust him to put the team in the best possible spot to win. Did you have any other thoughts on a lineup or the way we might try to play?
No, it's Emmy at the back. Obviously, I have the same back four as you. I think it's going to be a Kamara Tielemans sort of defensive midfield, and then, like I said, I think it's going to be Bailey, Rogers, and JJ across, and then Watkins up top. And then for your score, Mark, what's your prediction for the Champions League tie away at Monaco?
I've got 2-1. So Villa. We don't keep clean sheets on the road hardly ever, and I think it'll be 2. I'll give my goal scorers. I'll go Watkins and Rogers. I think that Rogers has a chance, and on the other end, only because I watched him play with Liverpool a bunch of times. Minamino's going to score. They'll play him in the.
Nice. I didn't ask for goal scorers, so that's very good. Although I did call Ollie Watkins today. I had Watkins on this pod. Listen back, everybody.
Yeah. Do you have it in your book as well for a little money, or is that just?
I did not. No, I did not have that one. I wish I had. After that night you and I spent in Cleveland. But I have 2-0 Villa. Even though we don't keep clean sheets on the road, I'm probably overconfident in this spot. This tends to be my role on the pod and in real life. I read into results too much and get overconfident quickly. But both of us picking a winner, so that's good. And then the last thing we're going to talk about today, we'll call it infiltrating the Villarati, even though we're not really. We're going to talk briefly about the transfer news because Villa have been extremely active in the window. Andres Garcia and Bade, who's named Loic Bade, he looks like a done deal. Garcia, there's a ton of smoke about him coming now. Malen was in the side today, like we mentioned, and didn't feature, but he likely will on Tuesday. Carlos de Fenerbahce appears to be a done deal, and I think that's a good bit of business from Villa. Mark, your thoughts on the window so far?
So my head's spinning. We don't do this. This is one of the more active windows, and it's mostly been outgoing so far. Having Malen already in, he seems like a prototypical Emery player, right? Like it is exactly the sort of player that Emery would target. A guy who has played in big games in the past, has had huge seasons statistically in the past. Isn't quite hitting those heights right now, but this is exactly the sort of player that he takes and molds and somehow immediately gets a tune out of. It has happened. We've seen it a dozen times. So I'm excited by that. If we do get Garcia and Bade, Bade did play today. I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't see that. No, yeah.
He did play today, and there's a whole right. We've had scouts all over that. Monchi's been over there, so who knows? The January's not done yet, but it seems like one that we're going to get done. everyone seems to be hyped about Garcia. And I am as susceptible as anybody to hastily made YouTube videos. I'm the worst guy to do. Like, I believe I texted you years ago, like, oh, we got Jordan Vertu. Check out this. He's a baller. Look at this. No offense, Jordan Vertu. He's still bumping around League On. So I'm like, no, I don't mean to dog him, but I was convinced the guy was like, gonna take us to new heights. Swing and a miss. Zaniolo's worth 15 goals. I promise. It's amazing. So I'm the wrong guy because I just think they're all great.
That's great. But I mean, you're right. Super active window for Villa. Not something we typically see in January, but I think the way the season has gone thus far, where it's been a big up and down, I think that Monchi and Emery see that they need more pieces, and they're looking to add where they can, but they are very much following that formula we've seen now for the last few years. Young, moldable, fast in most cases, and in terms of the defenders, ball-carrying defenders that are going to progress.
With Garcia, did you see the size on that boy?
Yeah. No, you would think he'd be like Alex Moreno, but he's like 6'1".
Yeah,
he's big.
Yeah. And that is a big physical presence. He's one. So like with Carlos leaving, and no, obviously we don't wish the guy any ill will. It's just he was a very expensive transfer up for us, and it just hasn't worked.
And high wages, super high wages.
Injuries and some sort of stop-start play, and he was absolutely immense against the best sides last year in the league. Like, think about how good he was against Manchester City and Arsenal again. Like it's just he was fantastic, but he didn't do it all the time, and he didn't even do it 75% of the time. And he doesn't fit he's not Emery's guy. Like, he doesn't fit what Emery wants to do. I expect the special one will be really happy with him. That is exactly the sort of player who would like a bulldog, mean guy who's going to tweet at you that we're not afraid of you and all sorts of other whatever sort of things he does. I think that's going to be perfect. That should be a good fit for him.
Nice. Well, Mark, I really appreciate you coming on. It's been great having you. I hope Alex doesn't listen to this because I'm afraid I might lose my spot. He'll just trade one bald condit for another.
Nobody will know the difference, to tell the truth. I feel bad for the people that are audio only because they're just going to hear similar, pretty much the same voices.
Yeah, and a lot of the same takes, weirdly enough, right? But do you have anything else that you want to add here?
No, I really appreciate the offer to come on, and I'm happy to do it, and up the Villa.
Up the Villa.
Hi, Mom and Dad.